My name is Esther. Before I wore a crown, I was an orphaned Jewish girl, raised by my cousin Mordecai. I never imagined that one day I would stand inside the palace of the king of Persia. But God was preparing something I could not see. I was chosen to become queen, yet I carried a secret. I was Jewish. Then came Haman. A powerful man, a proud man, a man whose hatred grew because Mordecai refused to bow before him. Haman wanted more than revenge. He wanted every Jew in the kingdom destroyed. A decree was written. A date was chosen. My people were condemned. Mordecai mourned, and he sent a message to me. He told me to go before the king and plead for our people. But there was a law. Anyone who entered the king's presence without being summoned could be killed, unless the king extended his golden scepter. And I had not been called for 30 days. I was afraid. I could have remained silent. I could have protected my position, my crown, and my life. But Mordecai made me understand something. Perhaps I had become queen for exactly this moment. Perhaps I was here for such a time as this. So I asked Mordecai to gather the Jews and fast for me. I would fast too. Then I would go to the king. And if I perish, I perish. I walked toward the throne. I did not know what would happen, but I stepped forward in faith, and the king extended his golden scepter. I was alive. God had opened the door. I invited the king and Haman to a banquet, then another banquet. I waited for the right moment. Meanwhile, Haman was preparing to destroy Mordecai, but God was already moving. That night, the king could not sleep. He ordered the royal records to be read, and there he discovered that Mordecai had once saved his life, yet had never been honored. The man Haman hated was suddenly being honored. The story was beginning to turn. Then came the moment. I stood before the king and revealed the truth. I am Jewish. I told him that my people had been sold for destruction, and I revealed Haman as the man behind the plot. The king's anger turned against Haman. The plan he had prepared for Mordecai became his own downfall, and a new decree was issued, allowing the Jews to defend themselves. The day intended for our destruction became a day of deliverance. My people survived. Mordecai was lifted up, and Haman's pride was brought down. But the story of Esther is more than the story of a queen. It is a story about faith, about courage, about standing up when fear tells you to remain silent. And there is something remarkable about the book of Esther. God's name is never explicitly mentioned in the Hebrew text, yet his fingerprints are everywhere. A king cannot sleep. A forgotten deed is suddenly remembered. A proud man prepares his own downfall. An orphaned Jewish girl becomes queen, and an entire people undelivered. Was it coincidence? No. Sometimes God works through great miracles. Sometimes he works quietly, through ordinary events that only later reveal his purpose. Esther did not know the whole plan. She only knew the next step, and she took it. She trusted God when she could not see the outcome. That is faith. You may be standing in a situation today that you do not understand. You may be asking, why am I here? You may not see God's hand, but his silence does not mean his absence. Esther could have stayed silent. Instead, she stepped forward. She risked everything for her people, and God acted. So remember her story. When fear tells you to hide, remember Esther. When you cannot see what God is doing, remember Esther. When you wonder whether your life has a purpose, remember Esther. Perhaps the place where God has put you today is preparing you for something you cannot yet see. Perhaps you haven't got to this moment for such a time as this. I was afraid, but I stepped forward. I did not know how how the story would end. I only knew that I could not remain silent. And when I stepped forward in